Hello students, welcome to another video of my channel. Today I am going to discuss about the process of the green plant, which is very important for them. Not only for important for green plant but also important for this earth, and that is known as photosynthesis. So what do you mean by photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is the process by which green plant produce their organic food component as a form of glucose with the help of sunlight, chlorophyll, carbon dioxide, and water, which they mainly absorbed from the soil. And by this process, the food component which they mainly produced, the sugar, that one they are using for their own biological processes. And for any kind of ecosystem, the green plants, those who can perform the photosynthesis, they are the only producers. Photosynthesis. If you observe this photosynthesis process, it mainly happens in the plant cell, mainly in the green plant cell. And if you observe a green plant cell, it has the chloroplast cell organelle. And in that chloroplast cell organelle, there are different parts are present. And in that parts, this process, photosynthesis, it happens in two main phases. So these two main phases of photosynthesis are light phase and dark phase. Now, why it is called light phase? Light phase, it is indicating the light dependent phase. That means to perform this initial phase, they need the light. And dark phase, it doesn't mean that it happens at night, at a dark time. It actually a light independent phase. That means for the second phase, for the dark phase, light is not required. This is the structure of a chloroplast, which mainly present only in the plant cell. And if you observe this chloroplast cell organelle, it has two membrane, the outer membrane and the inner membrane. And inside the chloroplast, we can see there are two main parts. One is thylakoid, and the piles of thylakoid form the granum. The another part where the thylakoid or the granum part is settled, that is called the stroma, which is also called as matrix, because this is the ground substance for the granum or for the unit of the granum, thylakoid. Now this photosynthesis, what they are doing, they are, the green plants, they are trapping the solar light, and that light energy they mainly convert into the chemical energy. If we observe the overall chemical equation of photosynthesis, it is 6CO2 plus 6H2O. That means with the help of carbon dioxide and the water, these are the main two raw materials. And for this process, they are using the photons, that means the sunlight, and their green color pigment chlorophyll, obviously. And through this way, they finally form the glucose, C6H12O6. Along with, they also form some end products like oxygen and water. Now the reactants, that means in this process, the main reactants are carbon dioxide and water, which I already mentioned. So carbon dioxide, which is available in the atmosphere, that carbon dioxide they mainly diffused in through their stomatal aperture, which is mainly present in the lower surface of the leaf. The another reactant, water, it mainly absorbed by their root part, and then through the xylem vessels it upwardly moved to the leaf part. So now inside the leaf they have the CO2, which they mainly diffused in through the stomata, and they also have the water, which is absorbed by their root part. And by this process, the products which they mainly form is the glucose, and water, and also the oxygen molecule, which mainly gives out into the atmosphere. Now, I already told that there are two main phases of photosynthesis. Now, where actually this process or these phases of the photosynthesis mainly happens? So there are two main phases of photosynthesis: the light phase, which is also called the light dependent phase or light dependent reaction. And the location of this light dependent phase is thylakoid membrane. This is the thylakoid membrane. And this thylakoid membrane, this is the site for the chlorophyll pigment. So that site, this is the actual site for the light dependent phase, because in this phase light is required. So light they need to trap through the chlorophyll pigment. So thylakoid, this is the site for the chlorophyll pigment. Chlorophyll molecules, they mainly absorb or trap the solar energy as a form of photon, and then that light they are using to degrade the absorbed water. So through the splitting of the water, they mainly release hydrogen, ion, electrons, and oxygen. The oxygen which they mainly form through the splitting of the water by the light, that is also called photolysis, that oxygen finally gives out into the atmosphere, and we are using that oxygen only for our respiration. The light independent reaction or the dark phase location is stroma, which is the ground substance, or it is also known as the matrix of the chloroplast. Now, if we see the overall reaction, the light which is mainly coming out from the sunlight, that mainly trapped by the chloroplast which is present in the thylakoid membrane. And then that light they are using to split their water molecule. That water molecule, after splitting, they mainly release oxygen, they release hydrogen ion, and also release electrons. Now that hydrogen ions which mainly formed after the splitting of water, it mainly picked up by NADP positive. This is the component which is present in the stroma of the chloroplast. The full form of the NADP is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. So NADP, it picks up hydrogen ion which mainly comes out through the splitting of the water, and then it mainly comes out as NADPH. So after picking H from the thylakoid membrane, NADP turns into NADPH. Now that NADPH is moving to the stroma portion, and it is helping in the Calvin cycle. So they are releasing that hydrogen to construct the sugar, because if we observe the sugar, the symbol is C6H12O6. So the H of the glucose, it mainly comes out from there, which is mainly picking by the NADP. Okay, the electrons which also they release through the splitting of the water, that electrons are mainly helping in phosphorylation process. Phosphorylation means addition of phosphate group. So what they are doing, they are adding inorganic phosphate with adenosine diphosphate, and by adding inorganic phosphate, they convert the ADP into chemical form of energy, ATP. So ATP or the chemical energy, this one is very essential to perform in the Calvin cycle. That energy is very much required so that they can finally form the sugar. Okay, and in this process, the carbon dioxide, that carbon dioxide is mainly fixed in the stroma part, and by the Calvin cycle, finally they form the sugar molecule, which is their main end product. And this way, they are finally produce the sugar molecule. So this is the two main phases of the photosynthesis, light phase and the dark phase. And in the light reaction, in the thylakoid membrane, they mainly produce oxygen, ATP, and the NADPH. And the Calvin cycle, which is mainly for dark reaction, it is mainly performed in the stroma, and it uses carbon dioxide, ATP, and NADPH to make carbohydrates such as sugars. So this is about the photosynthesis process and mainly about its phases. Few things I have skipped here because it's mainly made for class 10 standard. So thank you for watching this.